You ever had a job that you got fired from, whether you felt it was fair or not? Let's say you had a job and they didn't like your work, or let's say that they discovered something bad about you prior to being hired at the company and they decided to let you go. And have you ever had that happen to you and then go, F you, I'm staying on the job because I deserve it? Well, it turns out that the Fed governor, Lisa Cook, who has been part of that crew that has been incompetent, is mad that Trump is firing her and says she's not going to leave even though she's fired, and says he has no authority to fire her even though he actually does. This is from CNN. Let's see what we got here.
President Trump put on Truth Social tonight. He says that he fired the Federal Reserve Governor, Lisa Cook. This is according to a letter that he posted online, something that he actually floated just a few days ago. Let's listen.
President Trump, you're going to fire Lisa Cook, the Fed governor, over her mortgage
I'll fire her
fraud?
if she doesn't resign. Yeah, what she did was bad. So I'll fire her if she doesn't resign.
I guess he did.
The administration is accusing Cook, Shan, of committing mortgage fraud. And yet the Supreme Court has signaled that Trump doesn't have the authority to fire Federal Reserve officials without cause. Is just kind of accusing her enough?
Well, they're certainly going to say it's enough. And
I mean, come on, CNN. We've lived through the era of cancel culture where it was socially acceptable to fire people on accusations alone. I mean, remember the Me Too movement where it was a constant. As soon as someone said, I was essayed, I blah, 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 and immediate fired, go to jail, no trial. And all of these people that you're seeing here, these walking pinheads, blah, 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 blah. They were all for that. They were all for the immediate firing of anyone who was accused of anything that they didn't like, which is why it's so ironic now to see them saying, well, he must have cause. And that may be the truth, but it's still pretty ironic coming from CNN.
she's probably going to litigate that issue. I mean, if you're going to accuse somebody of the mortgage fraud as a crime, I mean, DOJ should charge her or say, usually actually you wouldn't even say we're doing the investigation, but they tend to at least announce the investigation. This is not DOJ opening anything. They haven't charged her. So as of right now, I think it's kind of a questionable for cause, but obviously that's what he's relying on, and I would expect her to challenge it. And this question of whether he can just at will get rid of members of the Federal Reserve would...
Which, by the way, I think 100% there needs to be easier access to fire people at the Federal Reserve. You shouldn't have an unelected group of people dictating our financial futures with no immediate pushback from our chief executive officer. The man that the American people elect as their leader should absolutely have way more authority over this. We need to get rid of every government branch, every government institution that is inoculated from the will of the American people needs to be thrown the hell out. We need much stricter controls, much more stricter oversight. That's part of the problem here in the U.S. today, is these people feel like they are kings and queens and can do whatever they want. They don't have to listen to the American people. They can screw us all over, and we don't have any say, even though we elect the people that are supposed to run our country, and suddenly they have no power. Well, because it's an independent blah, 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 blah. So I think all of that needs to be reformed and undone. Sure, there's potential issues down the road that could be caused by that, but who cares? We at least would have control over our own destinies.
Seem to be settled, so that's why they're trying to shoehorn it into the for cause, but it's definitely going to get litigated.
What is his objective here, Shelby?
Well, I think it's
To
clear he
fire?
wants more control overall. He has not made that a secret necessarily. He is.
Why should that be a secret? Of course he wants more control, because these idiots are doing everything they can to stand in the way of the economy growing. The very fact that the interest rates have not been lowered this whole time is maddening. But again, they feel inoculated from the American people telling them what to do. We don't need these elites. We're not the UK. We're not Germany. We're not the EU. We don't have class systems. We shouldn't be ruled by a bunch of elites. If we don't want them to make these decisions, they need to get the hell out the way.
Repeatedly gone after the Federal Reserve for not lowering interest rates. It's very clear what he wants to do. I also think more broadly, this isn't surprising insofar as this Trump administration, this 2.0 Trump administration, is very clear on its goals and more willing to go further than they might have in the first administration in order to achieve those goals. You're seeing.
That's because Donald Trump, in his first term, really believed that a lot of the rancor, the left outrage from the political elected class, he didn't think it was real. He thought it was performative because a lot of these people had been his friends for decades, coming from New York. He famously told the radio talk show host Rush Limbaugh that he was shocked that months into his presidency that they were still trying to destroy him. And he got a dose of reality. They tried to impeach him. They did everything they could to stand in his way. And then when he left office, tried to throw him in jail and destroy his family and destroy all of his fortune that he'd raised over the years. Donald Trump, rightfully so, he has a bone to pick with these people. And he's on a mission now to save this country from these radical leftists. And he's doing so with the full assurity that he is doing what is right because he has seen the abject evil and corruption of the Democrat Party. The rule of law has become nothing. They will do anything and everything to destroy him and the people that vote for him. Make no mistake. You get the king first, and then you go after the citizens who didn't vote or think the way you wanted them to. Which is why you're seeing this aggressive approach. They had time to sit back and think, okay, if we get back to power, how are we going to take this on? And how are we going to root out the corruption? Whether or not they're kicking and screaming when we drag them out, we got to do it. And that's what we're seeing now.
That on a whole host of issues, including here.
What are you hearing, Alex?
Well, look, it's pretty clear the administration is willing to use the instruments of government to exact revenge on people, to put pressure on.
Rightful justice revenge. I'm sorry. You play this game, you F around, you're eventually going to find out. And Donald Trump is going after the corruption, as he should.
On institutions. Trump, the White House, they clearly want to have a lot of influence on the Fed, to put loyalists in there.
And of course they should. Every administration should. It's absolutely ridiculous that this Federal Reserve is in any way, shape, manner, or form separated from the federal government, from elected officials. We shouldn't have lifers in government that can simply move in and out of administrations with no say. I think this has been one of the serious problems of our federal government. It has allowed the so-called deep state to fester and grow for decades now, to the point where they didn't feel like they needed to answer to the U.S. president, to the American people, which, of course, now they're finding out that that's not always going to be the case. But we're in a very precarious position. You cannot have all these little fiefdoms in positions of power, because inevitably that will lead to tyranny.
And Trump is very zeroed in on the idea of lowering interest rates. And it's possible that that's what's going to happen anyways. They've kind of hinted that.
It doesn't matter if it was going to happen anyways. They waited way too effing long. Trump has been after them from day one to get this done, but they refused to do it, which slows down the economy. Oh, they'll eventually get to it. Well, they're a little too late.
Might be coming, but Trump really is focused on the idea of lowering interest rates, and that's emerged as a real priority for him. He's telegraphed that this move. He telegraphed a few days ago, as you just showed,
trying
that he was
to
going to
get
make
the economy rolling. That's why it's so important. But of course, these people they don't care. Now, CNN writes, President Donald Trump on Monday said he has fired the Federal Reserve Governor, Lisa Cook, according to a letter addressed to her posted on his social media, and the first instance of a president firing a central bank governor in the central bank's 111-year history, which tells you that there's a problem, because there have been corrupt people in there before, and no one has done anything about it. This unprecedented move, CNN writes, represents a significant escalation of the president's battle against the Fed, which he has blamed for taking too long to lower interest rates, which he is correct. But Cook said the president doesn't have the authority to fire her, and that she plans to continue in her post because why? She doesn't need to answer to anyone. Cook has recently come under fire by Trump and the members of his administration for allegedly committing mortgage fraud. The Justice Department said it has plans to investigate those allegations first, raised by Federal Housing Finance Director Bill Pult. Cook has not yet been charged with any wrongdoing, but I suspect that likely will change in the near future. And so the woman said, President Trump purported to fire me for cause when no cause exists under the law. Imagine having the cojones to say, you get fired from a job and they say, well, we're firing you with cause. And you go, well, I don't see any cause, so I'm not leaving my job. I hope they don't let her back in the building. That would be funny. And so he has no authority to do so, meaning fire me. I will not resign. I will continue to carry out my duties to help the American economy as I've been doing since 2022. Well, I think we can do without this woman. And I really, really hope that they escort her out the building. That would make my day, and it would be funny content. Now, the Fed has declined to comment on the news. It is unclear whether Donald Trump has the legal authority, says CNN, to fire Cook over these allegations. The law specifies that a president may only remove members of Fed's boards for cause, though what merits a for cause firing has not been explicitly defined, which means he absolutely has authority to do so. If someone is doing a terrible job, that would be cause. You don't have to have a criminal allegation, but they're using the criminal allegation to really slam the hammer down. Now, Trump in his letter to Cook wrote, I have determined that there is sufficient cause to remove you from your position. And that's really all that matters. Now, a CNN review of mortgage documents shows that Cook took out mortgages for 2 properties, both of which were listed as her principal residence, which means there's fraud. However, it is not known why she did so or if she did so intentionally because, yeah, you do that intentionally when you list them both as your principal residence. I mean, shut the We don't know if it was intentional. That's enough. You don't need there to be charges. There's fraud right there. In light of your deceitful and potentially criminal conduct in a financial matter, I do not have such confidence in your integrity. Ding, 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 says Trump. At a minimum, the conduct at issue exhibits the sort of gross negligence in financial transactions that calls into question your competence and trustworthiness as a financial regulator. Trump's going to win this because he's damn right. If you're willing to lie on your mortgage forms, or if she claims it was an accident, well, then she's incompetent. How do you make such a gross, incompetent act? Especially from someone who should know better. Former federal prosecutor Shan Wu said, this is not the DOJ opening anything. They haven't charged her. Irrelevant. Shan Wu. That's absolutely irrelevant. She lied on her applications for loans. Whether they charge her or not is irrelevant. There it is in black and white. So as of right now, she says, I think it's kind of questionable for cause, says the leftist Shan Wu. It's definitely going to get litigated. Now, appointed by President Vegetables, a.k.a. Joe Biden, back in 2022, Cook is the first black woman who gives a to serve as a Fed governor. I'm so tired of this. This is the first. We don't care. The whole point of the United States of America was to have, well, not the whole point, but a point for the U.S. was to be colorless and skinless. We're all Americans. Who cares if you're the first? Utter nonsense. Now, while the firing may be challenged in courts, even going up to the Supreme Court, Trump's firing of Cook puts the central bank of the world's largest economy in uncharted waters. Good. They need a good shaking up. For example, it is unknown whether Cook would have to leave the Fed's board immediately, and if so, will Trump have the opportunity to nominate someone else to fill her seat? Cook's attorney, Abby David Lowell of Lowell and Associates, said in a statement to CNN that we will take whatever actions are needed to prevent his attempted illegal action. God, I hope they walk this woman out of her job. The Fed's next monetary policy meeting is less than a month away, over September 16th and 17th. Last week, Cook released a statement saying she would not be bullied into resigning. I have no intention of being bullied to step down from my position because of some questions raised in a tweet. I do not intend. It's not a tweet, darling. It's the president of the effing United States. I do intend to take any questions about my financial history seriously. No, you're incompetent is what we know for sure. Whether it's criminal is another matter. Now, as a member of the Federal Reserve, and so I'm gathering accurate information to answer any legitimate questions and provide the facts. The fact is you're either incompetent or a liar. Either way, you need to be gone. The Fed independence at risk. Yes, and it needs to not have independence from our freaking government, from elected officials. Why the F do we keep doing this? Why do we keep creating these institutions that don't report to the American people? Very anti-democratic, very anti-representative republic. These people need to always answer to the American people. We need much tighter controls to stop corruption. Now, the Fed is designed, CNN writes, to be independent from politicians, specifically so that it can focus on economic data and not political considerations. And that is the grift. Every time you have one of these independent institutions to not be independent from political leanings, it's always political. And it always leans far, far left. Every frickin' time. Every time it does. It's just a way, it is a grift that for whatever reason the Republican Party went along with. It is a grift to allow leftists to maintain control, permanent power, no matter who has been elected. That needs to be done away with. Every single institution that deals with the American people in the government must be answerable and have direct control tied to elected officials. Every single one of them. This is madness. It is stupidity. This 111-year process needs to be thrown the hell out. None of this independence. Anyway, CNN says they need this to achieve their dual mandate to keep price increases in check while supporting the job market. That seems like utter nonsense to me. They need to always be answering to the American people. Politicians often prefer lower interest rates, aiming to boost stock prices and make it cheaper for people to borrow money. Both popular moves among voters. But voters don't matter because they are stupid, my friends. That's what CNN's trying to tell you. But lower interest rates risk igniting price pressures. On the other hand, leaving rates too high could overly restrict spending and hiring, hurting the economy. Now, no central bank gets it right all the time, writes CNN. However, studies strongly suggest that economies with independent central banks experience better outcomes. Yeah, I'd like to see those studies and who's writing them, because data is only as good as the data you're putting in it. No, this is nonsense, and it must be done away with. We cannot have rule by fiat that hurts the American people. And that is what the Federal Reserve is. It is a rogue institution that is answerable to no one, and that must end. Now, CNN frets that if Donald Trump's move costs the U.S. its economic credibility, shut the up. American assets such as stocks and the dollar could get hammered. Right, because accountability will do that. Shut the hell up. That in turn could lead investors to demand higher premiums to lend money to the U.S. Oh no! The bigger picture is sadly simple. The Fed is designed to be independent of politics. For very good reasons, says Alan Blinder. What a perfectly good name, because he's blind to reality here, the former vice president at the Fed told CNN Monday night. He is trying to end that and make it an arm of the Trump administration, which will be very bad for monetary policy if it happens. What a bunch of crap. Now, Senator Elizabeth Warren, the top-ranking Democrat on the Senate Banking Committee, said in a statement that Trump's attempt to fire Cook is an authoritarian power. Of course, Pocahontas would say it's an authoritarian power grab that blatantly violates the Federal Reserve Act and must be overturned in court. Every Democrat's going to say that. If Trump sneezes on camera, they'll be like, authoritarian, sneeze, stop it. Representatives who are Republican, Senator Tim Scott, who leads the committee, did not immediately respond to CNN's request for comment. And immediately following Trump's announcement on Monday, the U.S. dollar index dropped by 0.3%. This index measures the strength of the dollar against a basket of international currencies, which has nothing to do with what's happening there. U.S. stock futures, meanwhile, slid further after a day in the green. Dow futures fell 100 points, blah, 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 blah. So, there you have it. This young lady here is going to try and fight the will of the American people. But the Federal Reserve needs to be reined in. It's just one man's opinion here. But I don't think that this should ever be separated from the control of the American people. We need a direct line to control our own destinies.